Welcome, and get ready to immerse yourself in these harrowing forest tales. These are some of the most chilling forest horror stories I've come across, so brace yourself. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any new videos. Now, let us delve into the first story by Johnathan Harker. I never thought a simple hiking trip could turn into a nightmare. But there I was, lost in a dense, unyielding forest, with the sun dipping below the horizon and a chill creeping into the air. It all started as an adventurous solo trek in the Appalachian Mountains. I've always been a nature enthusiast, and the lure of these ancient woods, with their sprawling beauty and untouched wilderness, was irresistible. The trail was well marked, or so I thought. I had started early, with ample provisions, a compass, and a map. But nature has a way of disorienting even the most prepared. It was when I ventured off the beaten path, lured by the sight of a rare bird, that I lost my bearings. The dense canopy above turned the forest into a dim maze, with every direction looking ominously similar. As night fell, the forest's serene beauty transformed into something more sinister. Every rustle in the underbrush, every snap of a twig, set my heart racing. I tried to stay calm, to remember my survival training, but fear has a way of clouding your mind. I built a makeshift shelter and a fire, hoping to wait out the night. That's when I heard it. A faint, distant wailing that seemed both human and not. It was a sound that didn't belong in the natural course of nocturnal forest life. I told myself it was just the wind, or a nocturnal animal, but part of me knew it was neither. The night was long and restless. Every shadow seemed to move, and the unfamiliar noises of the forest kept me on edge. I barely slept, and when dawn broke, I was both relieved and exhausted. I had to find my way back. I walked for hours, my sense of direction challenged by the sameness of the trees and the undergrowth. There were moments when I felt like I was walking in circles. I tried to leave markers, but even they seemed to disappear or get moved. It was as if the forest itself was against me. Dehydration and hunger began to set in. I found a stream and followed it, hoping it would lead to civilization, or at least a clearer area. That's when I stumbled upon the remnants of an old camp. It looked old, forgotten, with a rusted tin can and a torn piece of cloth. It was unsettling, a reminder that others had been lost here too. The real terror, however, came on my third day in the wilderness. I saw something move in the distance, a fleeting glimpse of what looked like a person. I called out, desperate for human contact, but there was no response. I hurried towards the spot but found nothing. This happened several times, enough to make me question my sanity. Was I being followed, or was it just my imagination? By the fourth day, I was weak and disoriented. That evening, in a small clearing, I saw the figure again. This time, it stood still, staring at me from a distance. It was a person, or so it seemed, but something was off. They were too still, too silent. Fear overtook me, and I ran, not caring in which direction. Luck was finally on my side as I ran into a group of hikers late the next day. They were shocked at my condition. I learned I had ventured miles off my intended path. They guided me back to civilization, but the experience never left me. Even now, back in the safety of my own home, I wonder about that figure in the forest. Who or what was it? A guardian of the woods? A lost soul like me? Or something else entirely? The forest keeps its secrets, and perhaps some are best left undiscovered. That first story was a chilling reminder of how quickly adventure can turn into terror. But hold on, because the next tale is even more unsettling. Let's dive into the second story by Emily Rhodes. Living in a quaint house with a forest as your backyard seems like a dream until it becomes a scene from a nightmare. My name is Emily, and I want to share the bizarre and frightening experiences that unfolded in the forest behind my garden, turning my peaceful life upside down. It all began subtly. I moved into this house in Vermont, charmed by its isolation and the sprawling woods at the back. The first few weeks were serene. Then, one evening, while tending to my garden, I felt a sense of being watched. I scanned the tree line, but saw nothing. I shrugged it off as a trick of the mind, a result of the eerie quietness of the area. The incidents escalated from there. Objects in my garden began to move or disappear. Garden tools, a bird feeder, even a small statue. I initially suspected local kids playing pranks, but never caught anyone. I installed a motion sensor light, hoping it would deter further incidents, but it didn't. Instead, it illuminated something far more unsettling. One night, the light flicked on, and through my kitchen window, I saw shadows moving at the edge of the forest. They weren't human. They moved oddly, almost unnaturally. I couldn't explain it, but every instinct told me not to go outside. The next day, I mustered the courage to inspect the area. I found strange markings on the trees, symbols I couldn't understand, and footprints that were too large to be human. I reported it to the local authorities, but they found nothing amiss. I started to feel a constant unease, especially at night. Sounds from the forest kept me awake. Whispers, footsteps, and once a chilling laugh. The final straw came one evening when I saw a figure standing at the edge of the forest, staring at my house. It was too far to see clearly, but it felt menacing. I decided to investigate against my better judgment. As I approached, the figure vanished into the woods. I followed, driven by a mix of fear and a need for answers. The deeper I went, the more disoriented I became. The forest seemed to warp around me, paths changing, landmarks disappearing. After what felt like hours, I stumbled upon a clearing I'd never seen before. In the center was a circle of stones with those same unrecognizable symbols. I felt a sudden chill, a sense that I wasn't alone. When I turned, I saw it. A figure, cloaked and hooded, standing at the edge of the clearing. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze piercing through me. I ran. I don't know how, but I found my way back to my house. I locked myself in, heart pounding, mind reeling. What had I seen? A local cult? A hermit? Or something else? I couldn't sleep that night, nor many nights after. I've since installed more security, but the feeling of being watched never really left. I avoid the forest now, and the tranquility I once felt has been replaced by a perpetual sense of dread. Whatever secrets the forest behind my garden holds, I no longer wish to uncover them. That one was indeed very scary, but this next one might just surpass it. Prepare yourself as we delve into the mysterious sounds haunting the forest near our next storyteller's house. Third story by Alex Turner. My story doesn't involve visual horrors or direct encounters, but sometimes what you hear can be just as terrifying as what you see. I'm Alex, and I want to tell you about the sounds that came from the forest near my house, sounds that still haunt me to this day. I moved into a small house in Oregon, surrounded by dense woodland. Being a writer, I sought solitude, and this place seemed perfect. But not long after settling in, I started hearing strange noises at night. At first, It was just the typical sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the occasional snap of a twig. But then things changed. One night, I heard a low, guttural growling sound. It wasn't like any animal I was familiar with. It was deeper, more resonant, as if something large was lurking just beyond the tree line. I tried to dismiss it as a bear or a large deer, but part of me knew it was neither. The sounds grew more diverse and more frequent. Whispers, as if people were talking just out of sight. The sound of something heavy dragging across the forest floor. A high-pitched screeching that made my blood run cold. I would lie in bed, covers pulled up to my chin, listening to these terrifying symphonies of the night. I reached out to my neighbors, but they either hadn't heard anything or were unwilling to talk about it. The local wildlife experts had no explanation either. I was at a loss, and the lack of sleep and constant state of anxiety were taking their toll. Determined to find an explanation, I set up audio recording equipment at various points around my property. What I captured only deepened the mystery. Among the recordings were sounds that defied logical explanation. A chorus of disjointed voices, a series of rhythmic thuds like heavy footsteps, and once, chilling, almost human-like sobbing. I tried to share these recordings with anyone who would listen, but most dismissed them as hoaxes or the result of natural causes. But I knew what I heard, and it was anything but natural. The climax came one foggy evening. The forest was alive with those inexplicable sounds, and driven by a mix of fear and frustration, I ventured into the woods. The deeper I went, the louder and more disorienting the sounds became. I felt surrounded, trapped in an auditory maze with no escape. Suddenly, everything went silent. The quiet was almost more terrifying than the sounds. I felt a presence, an overwhelming sense of being watched. Panic set in, and I fled back to my house, not stopping until I was safely inside. I never found out what was making those sounds. I eventually moved away, unable to bear the nightly torment. The forest holds secrets, and some, I believe, are meant to stay hidden. Those sounds still echo in my dreams, a haunting reminder of the unknown that lies just beyond our understanding. Ooh, that story definitely sends shivers down the spine, but brace yourself as the next tale of a night forest walk takes a turn into the truly unimaginable. Let's continue. Fourth story by Sarah Jennings. Imagine a tranquil night walk in the forest turning into an experience so surreal and terrifying that it makes you question reality itself. I'm Sarah, and I want to share the chilling encounter I had during one such walk. I've always found solace in night walks, especially in the forest near my home in Washington State. The night in question seemed no different. The moon was full, casting a ghostly glow through the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. But as I ventured deeper into the woods, an oppressive silence settled in. The usual sounds of nocturnal animals were conspicuously absent, as if everything was holding its breath. Then I saw it, a faint, flickering light in the distance. Curiosity overcame me, and I followed it, thinking maybe it was a camper or a hiker in need of help. But as I approached, the light seemed to move, leading me further and further into the forest. After several minutes, I found myself in a part of the forest I didn't recognize. The light had disappeared, and in its place was a dense fog that seemed to swallow everything around me. My heart began to race. I turned to retrace my steps, but the path was gone. Panic set in as I wandered aimlessly, the fog growing thicker, the darkness more oppressive. Then I heard it. Soft whispers echoing through the trees. The sound was indistinct, a jumble of words that I couldn't understand. I called out, but there was no response, only more whispers. Suddenly the fog parted, revealing a clearing I had never seen before. In the center stood an ancient, gnarled tree, its branches twisted into grotesque shapes. The whispers seemed to emanate from it, and as I watched transfixed, the tree appeared to move, its branches swaying despite the absence of wind. I felt an overwhelming urge to approach the tree, but every instinct screamed at me to flee. I turned and ran, the whispers turning into anguished screams behind me. I didn't stop running until I burst out of the forest and into the safety of my home. I've never been able to explain what happened that night. The forest has been a place of peace for me, but now it's tainted with a sense of dread and the unexplainable. I haven't gone back for a night walk since. Sometimes, when the moon is full, I can still hear faint whispers on the wind, and I wonder what secrets the forest is hiding. Terrifying, isn't it? But we're not done yet. Our final tale might just be the most unnerving of them all. Let's hear about Michael's encounter with a strange person in the forest. Fifth story by Michael Anderson. There are encounters in life that leave you with more questions than answers, and my encounter with a strange person in the forest is one of those. I'm Michael, and this experience has haunted me ever since it happened. I lived at the time in a small town in the Australian bush, where the line between civilization and wilderness is blurred. Hiking and exploring the forests were my weekend rituals. One Saturday, I set off into the dense woods, a familiar route I had taken many times. But that day, something felt off. The air was still, the usual sounds of wildlife eerily absent. As I walked, I noticed something unusual, a figure standing motionless in the distance. It appeared to be a person, but something about its posture was unnatural. Curiosity overpowered my initial hesitation, and I decided to approach. The closer I got, the more I realized how odd the figure was. It was dressed in what seemed like old, tattered clothes, standing perfectly still, facing away from me. I called out, but there was no response. A chill ran down my spine, but I moved closer. When I was just a few meters away, the figure suddenly turned. Its face was obscured by a hood, but I could see enough to know it wasn't normal. The eyes, if they were eyes, were dark voids, and the skin appeared rough, almost bark-like. I froze, a mix of fear and disbelief washing over me. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching me. Then, without warning, it darted into the forest with unnatural speed. I tried to follow, but it was as if the figure had vanished into thin air. I searched the area, but there was no trace of the mysterious figure. I returned to town shaken and confused. I told a few close friends about the encounter, but no one could offer any explanation. Some suggested it was a prankster or a hermit, but I knew it was something else. The encounter has changed my perspective on the forest and the unknown. I still hike, but now there's a part of me that's always on edge, always wondering if I'll see that figure again. The forest holds many mysteries, and I stumbled upon one that I'm not sure I wanted to uncover. That last story was truly unnerving, but the journey doesn't end here. Check out the recommended video on the end screen. It's one of my favorites and promises more chills. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more thrilling tales, and share in the comments which story kept you on the edge of your seat. Until we meet again, stay alert and tread carefully into the unknown.